I think it was one of my first jobs that I had with the council. It was Thornaby Impasse in those days. I never really understood where it came from and why it was here, but I think my job was to come down and see if we could support it, find out what was going on, that sort of thing.
Well, the Impasse Centre, was driven by a guy called Canon Bill Hall, really, who sort of took the idea that people had reached an impasse in their lives were blocked. And the idea was to try and create a vehicle where people could come and rethink and redirect themselves, or even just find a place almost of safety in a sense to say, where can I go next? I'm not working. I'm not sure what the future holds for me. Can I have some support and advice and assistance? A very simple but very strong idea. For the first time, perhaps for about 30 years, there was long-term and emerging unemployment, widespread across all age groups really. We had a large structural decline in the local industries in Teesside, which meant a lot of people who had thought they had a future no longer had a future. And it was extremely difficult for them to re-enter the labour market with the skills and experience and abilities they had. A lot of people had to rethink where they were and what they were going to do. Equally, a lot of the communities in and around Teesside, Thornaby included, faced a massive economic shock. That really this was a portal, a point of entry for people who were finding difficulty, perhaps getting back into employment, or who needed to take a new direction in their lives, who needed some support and advice and information. And providing at one centre with a very strong local focus was a good way to do it. And that attracted a lot of support. At the time it was a good idea at the right time, and it's still quite a powerful idea on its own.
The ethos was very much self-help. So it was people taking control of their own projects, making their own choices about what a community needed, and also respecting the skills and the experience of people who had lost their jobs. So there was often a strong craft element and practical element to the work that people envisioned being built into these projects, these centres.
I think when I first came involved in it, it wasn't doing a great deal, to be honest. I always remember funny enough, the entrance to the building. It was just like a little hole in the wall with a door, and there was a sign above it, but it didn't really, I wasn't even certain if it was open or not. Now, I always wondered how people would actually walking past would be attracted into the building. When I finally went in, there was nobody there. It was a little lobby. And I remember you had to go through a door and walk across a hall. And there was people sat at the back of the hall and everything went quiet when you came in and all you could hear was your footsteps. And I was thinking, that can't be a welcoming sort of way to get people in. So I think that was my first impression of the place was, a lot of potential. And I think the people involved at the time had a lot of ambition. But it just struck me that they needed some support, they needed some help, and they needed to maybe some assistance in getting it all together.
So my first contact was in a porter cabin in what is now the car park of the Five Lamps Centre, and meeting Joyce Hallett and one or two other people whose names I sadly no longer remember, and being bowled over by the enthusiasm and the vision of Joyce and others, and their excitement at the forthcoming opening of the Eldon Street Centre. So that was my very first contact.
There's about five of us in what was essentially a cupboard. You'd never get away with it these days for health and safety, but five of us stuck in a cupboard trying to sort of do as best we could. And we were living on top of each other, and I couldn't open my desk drawer for about 3 months because there was stuff piled up against it. And when we moved and I opened the drawer, I found a sandwich box with the sandwich still in it, and it was kind of grown out with the box. So we had to get a big pair of tongs, I think, to move it.
And I recall the evening when there was a committee meeting and we were talking about the importance of moving on, and the idea of a new name came up. And I think one or two of us were even walking around the room as we put the question to ourselves, what could a new name be? And it was either Alan Robson or Peter McGeeney who just had one of those moments and said, Five Lamps Centre. And that's how the name was coined, and it you know, 22 odd years later, it's still known as that.
Loftus Road, the advice shop, was the heart of the community. And from opening the doors on a morning, the locals would pop in. They didn't necessarily need to have a reason for coming in. They felt comfortable enough to just walk in the door and say, hiya, have a chat. The staff knew everybody locally. You knew, sort of everybody down the street. But they knew that when they had a problem, when there was something that they needed help and advice with, they knew they could walk in and they'd get that support, they'd get that advice. They knew the staff, sort of would pull out all the stops for them. And they would tell, as I've said, if you've got a problem, you need to go to the advice shop, you need to go and see Jane, you need to go and see Sue. And they knew they had the confidence to do that. And that advice shop was literally the heart of that estate. And it just, everything focused around it.
It's always been an organisation in growth, in transition, shaping itself to the different economic environments, but at the same time taking into account the original ideas which drove it forward, which was to break people out of this impasse and to find new and creative ways of being. One of the things about Bill Hawley was chaplain for the arts, when he had a big interest in creativity. And I think we all shared that, and I think it's still there. How do you help people live full and creative lives, whether in work or out of work, within the family or as a single individual? As someone who has a lot of resources or someone who has few resources, about creating choices and opportunity to live a full and creative life. And I think that's still very strongly present.
We're very fortunate. We've got some great relationships with some great partners. I've said before in public forums, Stockton Borough Council are the best local authority I've worked with in 33 years working in the public sector. Brilliant local authority, well run, creative and innovative. Other partners around, other local authorities, Business Links, Job Centre, DWP, the people who've helped us, we've won contracts with them. The work we're doing just now with, RBS Group, we're a trusted partner with them, we can open bank accounts. Northern Rock Bank, great work with them on the community flagship programme. Northern Rock Foundation, who've given us, sort of seed funding to allow us to do a bit of market testing and check out things that have become mainstream services. But what most of all with our partnerships is we want to be a brilliant partner. We invest quite heavily in time and energy in creating real partnerships. And the great thing is when you do that well, it's reciprocated.
Five Lamps have a very refreshing attitude to the role of the sector in how they can work in partnership, genuine partnership with other organisations. They challenge us, but not in a threatening way, and also always in a way that seeks to achieve the best outcomes for the people we're here to serve. I think they've got a remarkable approach to enterprise and a particularly successful approach to ensuring that they reach some people in our communities who are most distant and difficult to reach from mainline service provision. Sometimes often the most vulnerable, and sometimes those who maybe don't believe in themselves sufficiently, and they provide huge impetus to sections of our society that's fantastic.
Well, I think it's partly the history of the organisation. It's clearly got a long-standing record of making a difference to people's lives, and that's the kind of organisation that we want to invest in. It's something that's proven to have made a difference in the past, and it seems well placed to make a difference in the future.
And I think in the current climate it's vital that they're working with us and we're working with them to help to deliver and reach out to many of these communities that the people in suits, so to speak, are not going to be able to get to. I think voluntary organisations live on the same street, they have neighbours in the neighbourhood that they can actually get to and identify who actually need the help, and a variety of help, whether that be financial inclusion, whether it be advice, whether it be employment or skills training. It's that kind of credibility and it's that friend that you can actually work with, and then using organisations like that with our support to identify the appropriate professional support to give to them.
For us, I think the way forward has to be collaboration with other organisations. Obviously for us, that means like-minded organisations, people who are looking to do similar things to us, and maybe they just do a slightly different part of the game. But yeah, we're looking to spread our wings because there are people out there that need the kind of help that we can give, and there are organisations, hopefully, that see the business model that we have and are quite happy to come and work with that. And
I found the Five Lambs very, very easy to work with. They embraced that sort of philosophy. And, you know, we had an excellent working relationship. We had some really, really good times. So without the Five Lambs, we wouldn't have existed, probably.